Happy 30th anniversary to Martin Scorsese's GoodFellas. Yes, Jim and I are here to talk about GoodFellas. It was released September 19th, 1990. It went on to be one of the greatest gangster movies of all time. Widely considered one of the best movies of all time. It was of course directed by Martin Scorsese, screenplay by Nick Pileggi, with Martin Scorsese assisting. Is based on the true story of Mafia turncoat Henry Hill, as told in the book Wise Guy by Nick Pileggi. Have you ever heard of My Blue Heaven, Jim?
No, what's that?
My Blue Heaven is supposedly a movie that came out the exact same year Goodfellas, and it's based on Henry Hill's life in witness protection program, which I did not know and I've never seen, but now I kind of want to.
So it's
this
the
movie,
sequel to Goodfellas?
Yeah,
Okay.
sequel. It stars, of course, the legendary Robert De Niro, Ray Liotta, not quite as legendary, equally legendary Joe Pesci, legendary Lorraine Bracco, and I'm really talking shit on Mr. Ray Liotta here.
Yeah.
And Paul Sorvino as Paulie. If you want a Paulie played right, you got to get a Paul. Man, I've seen this movie probably 5 or 6 times going into it, and it's been probably only 2 or 3 years since I saw it the last time. I can't remember why, but I do remember watching. I think I caught it like 15 minutes into a cable run a couple years back on a weekend. And
Okay, what channel are we talking? Like, what time of day too?
no, I think it was like a premium. Is a premium.
Okay.
I got to see the fully unleaded or the fully leaded version of Goodfellas.
Good.
But you come in at young Henry blowing up. I think that's the scene I came in, him blowing up that car lot. I'm like, what? Am I gonna walk away from this movie right now? Come on.
Yeah.
I love this movie. It's great. What do you think, Jim?
Yeah, no, it's one of the best gangster films of all time, and you know, it's funny because you look at Martin Scorsese's catalog and it's full of these kinds of movies, right? Like these sort of like anti-hero movies, specifically gangster films in a lot of cases. I don't think anybody does it quite like him. I was looking at the gangster movies I've seen and just thinking about, okay, what do I feel about all the spectrum of these gangster films? Because so many of them are so much alike that it's interesting. This one kind of stands out to me, as much as like a Scarface does or a Godfather does, but they stand out in different ways. This movie stands out. I was trying to compare them to like directing styles to the characters in this film. Like Martin Scorsese has his movies are Tommy, whereas like Francis Ford Coppola's gangster movies are like a Paulie, right? They're just like, they move a little slower. They're not taking quite as many risks, that sort of stuff. Here, like Martin Scorsese's pulling out all the stops, right? He's using all these tricks of filmmaking to get you in the headspace of this lunatic who's surrounded by other lunatics. And I love it.
Yeah, and I've read the Godfather book, and I've seen all the movies, and I've listened to the director's commentary, and I know that Coppola really took the craft seriously. But man, when you read some of the behind the scenes stuff here with Scorsese, he kind of seems like the Stanley Kubrick of gangster films, where he's like personally tying Ray Liotta's knot because he wanted to make sure he's just like the wise guys that he grew up with, and he's doing all this behind the scenes and encouraging it in all the actors. Like, supposedly Robert De Niro was calling Henry Hill 7-8 times a day, like asking questions about like, how did Jimmy pour his ketchup bottle? Like if he's shaking out ketchup on a hamburger, like how would he do it? And
Henry Hill in witness protection at that time. Let's not forget, right?
Yes. Yeah. Just like all this insane, crazy detail, and like he did. There's a lot of improvisational quality to this, and I guess that's why the fucks. This is just. I remember when this came out, like this was widely decried as like one of the coarsest, foulest movies. It averages 2.2 fucks per minute.
Nice.
Half of them made by Joe Pesci. Apparently, in the original screenplay, there's only like 60 fucks in the whole film, and the majority of them are introduced by Joe Pesci just running his mouth.
Yeah.
and using it as punctuation, which I thought was great. But like, it seemed like one of these things where like it was a real labor of love, and they took, we keep on hearing this, like creative struggles. For example, the famous one shot of them going in the back door of the club was set up because they couldn't get permission to film the front of that bar and get in the front. So Scorsese decided to just make a fucking meal out of it, and it does exactly the effect he was hoping it was, which is like
Yeah.
you feel like you're Karen being brought into Henry's world, and you're seeing all of the glitz and glamour and how just impressive it must be.
Yeah, that might actually be my favorite scene in this entire movie.
It's really good. It's really good. And there's a lot of one takes, because Cecily kept on saying like, that's the famous one. Or like when you go and you're seeing all these different gangsters, like, oh, there's Frankie No Nose and there's Tommy Two Times. And I'm like, oh no, it's not the one. It's not the one. And when you finally get there, it just lands.
Yeah. Scorsese's able to, like, I don't know, effectively portray this life in so many of his movies, because he, I think, intuitively understands the romance of it. Like, there is an allure to this lifestyle that this movie in particular, I think, brings out. Like, you've got things like The Irishman, which he did recently, that like has bits of that, but it doesn't have the same vibrancy or something that this movie has, the same energy that this has. You feel like when you're young Henry Hill and you're seeing these guys across the street and you're seeing all their cars and they're letting you park them and you're 15 years old. And that idea of just like being able to do anything you want is so ingrained. He understands it so intuitively that when he makes a movie about it, it almost feels like it's a documentary in some ways.
Yeah, he really understands the power of fantasy. But on the other hand, I thought while I was watching this might be the least amount of glory put into a glorification of gangster films, because it essentially, the glorification in my mind stops during Henry and Karen's wedding. Like, that is the high water mark of the movie, and it's literally all recession and stinky fish smell of a beach low tide from there on. And it's weird because you're right. He shows like from his young man's perspective, who, he's living in this small house with 5 brothers and sisters and a dad that beats him. How glamorous and amazing this lifestyle and how like impressive these guys are. But then when Karen comes in, she kind of like serves to take off that gloss a little bit and be like, look at these, look how bizarre these lives are and how garish everything is. And they're all insular, so no one is there to tell them, you're wearing too much makeup, your skin looks terrible, your style is bad, your children are brats. Like, no one is there to puncture that bubble and be like, this is all fully insane. But then she gets corrupted and she gets forced into that same mold and eventually becomes essentially just like him.
Yeah, that's what I love, because Henry Hill would be an easy character to not feel a lot of sympathy for, because he's, enamored with this lifestyle at the beginning. But then you look at Karen, and she's the one who has the change throughout this, right? Like, she's the one who gets lied to about what she's getting into. She sees she's taken in by this attractive, well-off, well-liked guy who's just, flashing everything. And she sees that and thinks, okay, well, this guy, is someone who I want to know. And he lies to her about what he does. And by the time she figures out, like, oh, this lifestyle actually has huge drawbacks, she's already in it. And there's no way out of that kind of life.
I wonder, because there is the scene in the movie where he beats the holy hell out of her neighbor. One of the most, I remember the first time I saw that movie just being like, what the fuck? And when he goes back with that bloody gun and is like, hide this, she even says, like, that's the moment like most of my girlfriends would be like, nope, I'm not hiding the gun for this guy. This is shady as shit. This is crazy. But she's got a little bit of that like Walter White the switch that's kind of like, most people would go the right route and some people just take the left detour. And they show Henry's kind of the same way, they have that thing where they can flip the switch and see the way everybody else lives as suckers and losers and chumps, and the way to really get ahead and live is to do this way. And I mean, I do think it's at least glorification of a gangster film of all time. But having said that, the only consequence that Henry really faces is that he gets returned to mortal life. Like that's his punishment.
Yeah.
Like you were a god and now you're a schmuck.
Yeah,
You
they
were a
don't.
good fella and a wise guy, and now you are a schlub, just like every other fucking taxpayer out here. And
Yeah.
that's not like, the more I watch the movie, the less satisfying. It's kind of like Wolf of Wall Street, only there is no like, hey, it actually gets better. I'm actually back connected to my, but it just feels like the punishment is not nearly appropriate to the many crimes and lives destroyed in this film.
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you want to have anything else, just kind of general chit chat, or do you want to start talking about this movie? Because I got my notes organized in like the epochs of Henry's life: boy Henry, young man Henry, Henry at the height of his powers, prison, decline, late stage.
Prison
Just want to go.
Yeah,
Prison
let's
Henry.
maybe talk about some of the awards, I guess, that it
Oh yeah,
won or
please.
didn't win. It went up against Dances with Wolves, which was a monster that year in the Academy Awards. It got nominated for 6 awards: Best Supporting Actor, Best Picture, Best Director, Best Film Editing, Best Adapted Screenplay, and Best Supporting Actress. Only Joe Pesci won for Best Supporting Actor.
Who did he go against? Do you have
That's a good question. I don't have that information at hand.
Okay. Yeah.
But Dances with Wolves won like 4 out of the other 5, and I think Whoopi Goldberg won for Supporting Actress in Ghost.
In Ghost. I wonder if I bet if I go back and watch I don't know. Everyone, I've seen Dances with Wolves I think once, and I saw it as a teenager, and I remember being kind of impressed with it, but I can't imagine that 30 years later this Oscar race looks legit. They're like, yeah, Dances with Wolves might be a fine movie and it showcases the modest talents of Kevin Costner, but like this movie is a landmark.
Modest
like
talent.
It's a top
Yeah.
3. It's a top 3 gangster movie of all time, easy.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. Siskel and Ebert are with you on that. They both gave this movie Best of the Year that year, so
that's good company.
Yeah, I don't know. It didn't get maybe the acclaim that it should have gotten. But it made some pretty good money at the box office. It was a $25 million budget, which actually was Scorsese's largest budget to date. To that date.
Wow, I was just thinking that's pretty modest for the star power they got, and the anytime you see period piece stuff, like the set design, the costuming, everything just balloons.
Ray Liotta's wardrobe alone, I'm sure, was like half the budget.
Sure.
Yeah, 25 million budget, and then it made it's hilarious. Domestically, it made 46.8 million. Internationally, it made 282,000. But
damn,
it only opened in Australia and the UK on like 30 theaters each.
You said 1,000. I thought you meant million. I was like, oh my God, the world's got a huge appetite for American excess and gangsterism.
No, just the opposite. Yeah, it doesn't have a huge
barely
appetite
made
for
any.
That. So
Interesting.
I don't know. It's 34th most popular movie in the box office that year.
Wow. Speaking of the costume budget, I did see that like for Jimmy, Robert De Niro, he had a custom watch and pinky on the pinky ring ensemble for every one of his costume changes in the movie. Like a coordinated, dedicated set. Like it's like, come on, that's like 50 grand right there. I don't know how many trucks they had to rob to get that wardrobe.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, that's it for the awards and the budget and stuff. And yeah, it was a pretty successful film all around.
I think that this movie does a really good job of telling the story. I guess Godfather does it too, through like, Michael Corleone explaining to his girlfriend, at his father's wedding, kind of like the life and why people get into it and all that kind of stuff. But like having Henry just narrate, why the mafia is the way it is. Like this is an immigrant population that didn't have a lot of recourse to the official state apparatus for protection and security. In fact, for a lot of the Italian American experience is the exact opposite. Like any other immigrant population, America opened them with open arms, and police nightsticks to the skull. Mm-hmm. So the mafia stepped in and is almost like the way I understand it, it's like that they essentially duplicated the network they had in the old country, like the exact same type of pay, protection money. That's still like the Italian mob is not anywhere where it used to be in America. Like they passed several laws, like RICO among them, just to crack down on these guys. But I understand like in Italy and Sicily, that stuff is still going strong. Um, but like just the way he walks through why the mafia is the way it is and how it works and how it's seen by the population, I thought is just really fascinating. And this young Ray Liotta kid gives such a great, like, kind of winning performance. He's a good looking kid, seems like he's bright and sharp. That's why he gets used a lot. That his voiceover about, like, you can do anything you want as he's fleeing like a car lot that he's exploded is just such a great visual.
And they got a good likeness of Ray Liotta in this young actor. I don't know who he is, but it looks quite a bit like him.
What'd you think about the kid Joe Pesci? Like, I feel like they fucking cloned Joe Pesci and aged that clone up to be about 17 years old. And maybe even like, hey, Joe, suck this balloon full of helium down and do some ADR for us. I couldn't he's only in the movie for like 2 scenes and he's got like 3 lines. But this kid is the spitting image of young Joe Pesci. Utterly, utterly convincing in the role.
Nice. I didn't even notice him. That's on me, I guess.
But I think it's interesting how they get these kids into the life. Like, at first you're just watching the guys' cars. Like, they're parking in the streets. No one's going to sit on them. No one's going to fuck them. And they pay you $5 to just keep an eye on their car while they're. And if you handle that responsibility, maybe you start parking cars. And if you handle that responsibility, maybe you start blowing up cars. And
then taking a package across town, right? Here's a new pair of Italian leather shoes. Take this across town and that's it. Don't ask questions.
Yeah, and it's like at each step of it seems like it's easy money and it's fun. And like, now you're like, hey, here's some free cigarettes. Go sell them on the corner, make yourself some money. Of course, when you get pinched, then it's like they're going to school where they teach you everything opposite that you're taught in public education. Like, what are the shortcuts? Where do you get ahead? Where do you use people? Never talk to the cops, never snitch, never. And this like it's almost like a graduation ceremony. When he gets arrested for the first time, he gets pinched. And I love how he starts to go up to talk, like it's like they're hearing this kid's case and he starts to go up to represent himself. And this like mob lawyer in a $10,000 suit glides in and like grabs his shoulder and like sits him down, and you can see I love his look at the judge and the judge's look at him like, okay, this is not justice we're going to dispense today. It's amazing. And they treat this kid like he's combination graduated high school and gone through his bar mitzvah. Like this huge celebration of getting his quote unquote cherry popped by going into the slammer and never ratting on his friends and keeping their mouth shut. He kind of passed the test. So
yeah, you talked about some of the narration. I had a problem. I don't know if this is Amazon's problem or the movie's problem, but I was watching it on Amazon and the narration was much louder than the dialogue in the movie. I don't know why they can't get these mixes right.
Dude, Amazon's the worst. Like, and it's so weird because I imagine we watched it on very similar sound systems.
Yeah.
But I don't know what yours is, like your mix and all that stuff is set up. I didn't notice that, but I do notice that Amazon is among the worst as far as like the mixes being all over the place.
I know we're not past the young Henry stuff yet, but I can't remember where this happens, and correct me if it doesn't happen when he's young, but there's a couple of scenes of foreshadowing early on. One of them is where somebody tells him the 2 greatest things in life, which is never rat on your friends and always keep your mouth shut. Is that to the young Henry?
Yeah. When he pulls him out, he's like 13 or 14. He pulls him out of jail for the first time. Yeah,
and I immediately was like, okay, well, having seen this movie, but not for a long time and not remembering any of it, I was like, well, that's coming back. He's going to probably rat out. And then when there's another scene where, he's talking to Tommy and the quintessential, like, oh, you think I'm funny? Yeah. What's funny about me? Huh? And then afterward, when they reveal it's all a joke and he's like, oh, I got you. I had you going. You were scared. You'd probably fold under questioning. And I was like, oh yeah, they're I know where they're going with this.
Yeah,
And I don't know if
yeah,
that
and everyone.
obviously that's the writer in Pileggi or Scorsese or somebody coming out and doing that, right? That's not like
Oh
a
yeah, for
thing
sure.
from real life.
Um, I think you're right, especially since like the laughter and subsequent watches like seem so forced.
Yeah.
But I don't know because like Joe Pesci as Tommy is legitimately hilarious.
Hmm.
Like, I think he's like one of those guys. I've known a lot of guys. Like, in fact, my granddad's the one that passed away last year. It reminds me a lot of this, and that like granddad being legit mad at you is almost indistinguishable from grandpa just busting your balls.
Yeah.
Like, and a lot of times, like, the teenage grandsons would get in trouble because at some point you start like busting the old man's balls back a little bit on the construction site or whatever. And like when you got him, when you can't tell the difference between him joshing with you and him like, no, seriously, I'm fucking pissed. Things can go badly for you really quick. And I can't imagine like choosing to live a significant fraction of your life with a guy like this construction of Joe Pesci. Uh,
Yeah, because
it's
when he's
super fun when it's fun, but holy shit.
yeah, and you know, like you're describing there, when he's joking, he almost gets mad at you. So any little thing will set him off, right? And he'll
Right.
literally like he shoots Spider for not bringing him a drink, essentially. And that whole thing spirals out. But like when you can't tell when someone's joking, and then when they are joking and you don't react to that as a joke and they get pissed, and you know that whenever they get pissed, they could just literally shoot you. That is
Yeah.
such a volatile situation. I couldn't live that way. There's no way I could live around someone like this.
Yeah, and I was just thinking like that famous scene about like, am I clown to you? Do I amuse you? Because it's not just that you can't tell the difference, but like he actually goes further and he has meta jokes about the fact that you can't tell the difference, and he fucks with you that way.
Mm-hmm.
Like Henry gets to this point where he's like kind of scared, like God damn, and then he finally is like, oh, you're bullshitting me, and everyone cracks up. But like, if he read that wrong
Uh-huh.
and Tommy was actually taking him to task, he would have gotten plugged.
Yeah.
And it also kind of makes Robert De Niro's character much more impressive that he can actually kind of slap, like, you know, when Tommy really fucks up, like when he eventually kills Spider, he can be like, the fuck is wrong with you? Are you insane? Are you just like, what is the hell? Like, that he can do that. Tommy has so much respect for him that Jimmy can take him to task and not have any repercussions from it.
Yeah.
It's kind of interesting.
Grew up together, and you know they trust each other. They know each other. Yeah, for sure.
It's not only that. It's like he's his uncle. I think it's like you know, you never meet Tommy's dad, but I feel like that Jimmy is the one. Like maybe Tommy is the screw up, the black sheep of the family, and Jimmy being the Irishman, right? He can't run his own, so it's like kind of like let's give him to Jimmy. Let Jimmy sort him out. There's something to that.
Yeah, to the
'Cause it
point
doesn't
where
feel
like I was shocked that they were even considering making him in this movie. I'm like, what do they see in him? Like, are they just trying to make him to keep him off the streets? Because he's too much of a lunatic to like. Maybe he'll settle down a little bit if he doesn't ever have to go out and do anything.
right.
But
Right.
you know, by the end, it's revealed that that's just a ruse.
Turned out it's a La Ruse.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, can you even imagine Tommy? Like, this is the way he carries himself when he's not a made man.
Yeah,
If he gets made and he's untouchable, oh, God, he would turn. It would be somebody would whack him. There'd be a sit down.
you'd have to.
There'd be a talk, and there would be there'd be violence done to him, because what else are you going to do? He's just the type of guy to whack a judge in broad daylight.
Mhm.
You know, you can't, like, the mafia is many things, but stupid, not usually. But I do like this Jimmy, and they have like different feels, like Jimmy, especially early movie Jimmy, because he is this Irishman, he is this outsider within this very insular organization. I felt like they did a good job with his characterization that he's always overcompensating.
Mhm.
Like, yeah, sure, the made men, the Peziovantes, they splash cash, but not like Jimmy does. Jimmy's handing out $100 to the doorman. And so you brought him a drink, here's $100. He's ingratiating himself to people because he needs to do that. He can't command that respect. He's never going to be a made man. And I love how they show the different energy of like Tommy comes across very entitled. thinks that he's just going to skate through life and not a single problem. He's invincible. Where Jimmy feels vulnerable. And I wonder if that's why, because by the end of the movie, they're both monstrous in different ways. Like Jimmy's turned into this paranoid, reclusive, crazy person. And Tommy has always been crazy, but he gets whacked before, he can reach his full potential of awfulness. But I thought that was really the way they established Jimmy as this big, flashy spender. And like Henry obviously gravitates towards that.
Can you believe they're trying to pass off Robert De Niro as 28 years old in this movie? It's a 47-year-old Robert De Niro at that point.
How old is Ray Liotta when they shot this film? Because they try to pass him off as 20 years old when he first meets Karen. I'm like, this ain't. That guy's eyes are the sunken eyes are 40 years old at least. I mean, he's probably in his mid 30s, right?
Let's see when he was born. He's born in 1954, so he's like 11 years younger. He's like 36 in this movie.
Okay. Yeah, and I don't think he convincingly pulls off a 21-year-old brash mobster guy.
What would you rather have? Them just like claim, hey, this 47-year-old De Niro is 28, just roll with it and maybe do a little makeup and lighting, or do what the Irishman did and like digitally de-age them?
If you can digitally, I think that always works better. Both approaches, because I remember when we watched Rear Window, right? Mm-hmm. Jimmy Stewart's supposed to be like a late 20s war reporter, adrenaline junkie, hard charging, and he's like 50 years old or something crazy. And like that happens several times in A Wonderful Life. He plays like an 18-year-old when he's in his mid 40s, right? And they don't do anything. They don't do anything to try to hide it. They just tell you, like, they put some shoe polish in his hair and they dress him in a college sweater, and like, there's Jimmy Stewart. He's 18 years old. You fuckers tell me otherwise, right? Sure. So it works, and like once you like your mind notes like, oh, he's supposed to be 18. Oh, okay. So it definitely works, but like I do always feel like it's better to go with a little makeup. It's better to do a little digital. I thought the stuff they did in Irishman was fantastic.
It was. I think it works better when the actors are a little bit younger. I think too extreme of a digital de-aging can be a problem. Like the movement of human beings changes as they age. And we talked all
Martin
about that in our
Scorsese
Irishman podcast. Which
if he did Goodfellas now instead of 1990, and they were all that age, it would be amazing. Yeah. Like they could age him down 15 years, no problem. Age him up 15 years is exactly what that movie needed.
Yeah.
But this is Young Man Henry. There's another, like, this is slightly less famous one shot, but I love the one where they're going through the gangster club and they're talking about like you meet all the characters. It's like a Dick Tracy film. Here's Fat Andy, Frankie the Wop, Freddie the Nose, Pete the Killer, Nicky Eyes, Jimmy Two Times, and they all like you instantly kind of like, that's gangsters, man. It's like, what is your most prominent psychological quirk or physical feature? That's you. Mm-hmm. That's you. Like I'd be Aaron the Beard probably, or the Gut. I don't know. What would you be?
I don't know. My dad grew up around this type of community.
Do you have a nickname for you?
They had a nickname for him. Yeah, he's Blackie because he had jet black hair.
What did he ever come up with a nickname for you and your brother? Like did he give you a mafia? No, he didn't.
No.
But I don't know. There's like they also show like again the way the mafia works, and there's like multiple tragedies within the overall arcing one with Henry. But like this guy that Joe Pesci is just terrorizing his bar and running up multi-$1,000 tabs, and he goes to Paulie to ask, and it's like it's such a great scene. Because Henry is taking this guy like he's going to help. And what he's doing is signing his business's death warrant.
Yeah.
And the guy begs him to do it.
Mm-hmm.
He absolutely begs him, like, come on, Paul, I just need to, you just sign. You don't have to do nothing. I'll take care of everything. And then suddenly it's like getting infected by one of those brain funguses with like The Last of Us or the ants. Like once he signs that, it's over. Yeah. Like the mafia is just going to pump and suck every little bit of juice from this business. And then when it's over, cash the insurance check. And they keep on, like, it's funny because, like, the mafia doesn't care about maximizing their revenue because it's literally all free money.
Sure.
They don't worry about, like, hey, I got a $20 carton of cigarettes here. I shouldn't sell it for 10. I should sell it for 15 because it's still, or hell, I could sell it for 18, you know? People drive across the street to save a nickel on gas, but they don't care because they didn't pay for any of it. It's infinite profit.
Yeah.
Like Proposition Joe's buy for one, sell for two, buy for nothing, sell for whatever the hell you want. You just made infinite profit. It's insane.
Yeah, and you know, you're satisfying customers in a way that businesses that need to be profitable can't. You know, businesses that have cost can't. So you know, next time they want something, they're coming to you for it, right? And then also, yeah, you'd think like they might have been more long term, stable and successful if it weren't for that tendency, right? To just kind of not think about it, just get the profit where you can get it, and then tomorrow's another day, we'll figure it out. I get that sort of thing is done in those circles, but it seems strange to me because, like, what if you could get, you know, 3% of every business in, you know, Chicago or New York or something, right? Like, you'd be much better off in the long term. Just they don't think that way.
But they do that too, right? Because that's like when you go around the
Sometimes.
block and get protection money. You're getting like 5% of the take, and then
But they don't
when
care if that
somebody
protection money runs you out of business. Like, that's the thing. Like,
that's true. It's fuck you, pay me,
it's
right?
fuck you, pay
That's
me.
the
Yeah.
whole.
And then that will,
I love
you know,
that part
close
too.
their revenue stream eventually if it comes to that, and they don't mind. And that's always seems strange to me.
Because the whole like, and I don't know like if this is a very like New Jersey East Coast thing, but it does seem like this is much more Robin Hood than because I think of like the Corleone family as portrayed in The Godfathers, and it was all like interlocking. We got protection, we got girls, we got gambling, we got the influence game. Like it's just like it's a brick fucking wall. This seems more of just kind of like Viking raiders. Like we're just going to steal shit off these trucks.
Yeah.
And work our union contracts to like keep the fuzz off of us, keep the businesses like they are a little bit like have the awareness of a parasite, because like if they stole literally like he said something like there's this great line, it's like $50 billion of business came through this airport and we did our best to steal it all. But obviously they don't. It's got to be something that the businesses is a cost of business, or else the airport goes under, and then what do they do? But I don't know. I always felt like when I was watching Godfather that like Marlon Brando's Don Vito was smart enough not to kill the host.
Yeah.
And like these 70s gangsters, and maybe that's because you're supposed to understand this is the beginning of the end.
Right.
You know, this is what
drugs,
this is
the stuff that
this is the shit
Vito was worried about. Yeah.
This is the shit that like this that destroys that brick wall, is that if you make it impossible to do legitimate business, then you know there's like a rising tide rises all boats. Well, you know, a low tide sinks all of them, and you can't have that. But the other thing I really admire about Martin Scorsese's gangster films, and they usually do this, there's a few notable exceptions, but they have a fairly well written woman at the heart of it. Like Karen, and she's got agency, because like you do. She has the wool pulled over her eyes, but not anything like Kate in The Godfather, where she literally doesn't know what she's dealing with until the doors close at the end of the movie. Like, she gets like, she definitely gets the first hit free, but like there's flashing red warning signs that you should get out, and she blows past them all. And she kind of has like, there's the like her like most gangster films, I feel like the women serve only as a way to apply pressure to the men. Like, oh, if you don't stop this, I'm gonna take your kids. I had an abortion. It's like, it's just the juice a little emotional drama, where Karen felt like she has her own agency, and she is a well-developed character, and she has like that scene. Oh my God, that scene where she she sticks up Henry with the gun. Like she can be scary in the same way that Henry can be scary, and the way that like Kate, like the worst she could do is like threaten to leave you, and then then Michael just like, nope, you're not going to do it, you're out, you're never seeing your kids again. And that was the resolution of that movie until Godfather 3. This, it's like, nah man, you sleep on Karen, she'll fucking kill you. And also, what'd you make of that scene where Paulie and Jimmy come to Henry at his mistress's pad and is like, hey, look, we get it. We get what you're doing here, but you got to stop this.
Yeah, it's that tug of war between like the freedom that they all have, right, and keeping shit together. I don't know. That's the thing that I noticed about it. It seemed to be like they didn't want to limit him, but also all of them recognize that the shit he's doing is causing them problems, and it's going to cause
Right,
more if
like
he continues.
if one of the wives go Bronco, what says that they're not? Because like they do make this point, like they're. I feel like these gangster wives, their life is an eternal Tupperware party.
Hmm.
Like, and as exciting as that is, like it's a facsimile of like a socialite life. It's like this low rent kind of cheap version of it. But like if any of them, and they're all clearly like there's this great pastiche scene where she's going after they get married. There's that first one she's sitting in and she's talking about like, oh, you know, they got this bad skin, they got the bad hair, they got the cheap clothes, they got the terrible kids. um if any of them would start to think like, hey, what if we did something different? What if we found, what if this life isn't all there is to it? It would destroy them all. And it's also something tied up, which I don't really understand, this machismo kind of thing where it's like, hey, you can have mistresses on the side, but you got to go home to your family.
Yeah.
You find a girl that'll give you a blowjob because you don't want the mother of your kids kissing your kids like that, but like you gotta respect it's the mother of your kids. I don't fully understand that almost religiosity that's tied up in it too.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. That family angle is something that they're definitely, serious about. But yeah, I love that scene when she realizes, what kind of life she's in and that this is kind of it for her. And then I equally love that scene where she finds out about Janice, I think is his mistress's name, and she goes to the apartment and she's screaming to the superintendent, like, do you know you have a whore in 2B? Rossi the whore is living in 2B.
No, it's like this
so good.
It's funny because I don't know, maybe Godfather I got the wrong impression because Kate's not a mafia girl. She's not a mafia Don's wife. And they make that point clear. Like Don Vito doesn't have problems with his wife because she's a made woman, man. She takes all this shit in stride. I feel like Karen, they establish her as kind of like a mafia wife because she's like, she'll hunt you down in the streets and slap you up and be like, you stood me up. And she will go after your mistress and try to kill her. And she will stick a gun in your face and do all that kind of stuff. It's like, again, yes, she was excited by the glamour and the lifestyle and the danger of Henry, but she has a little bit of that built into her as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I do have a question, and then I love like all this stuff he's playing around with this woman character he kind of perfects in Kim Basinger's performance in Casino. But there's a couple of questions I still, as many times as I've watched this movie, I don't understand. Like, for example, why does Henry and her live with their parents for like the first X amount of their married life? That seems it seems an insane thing to do. He's got money.
Yeah, I couldn't tell if he didn't quite have enough money at that time, but he's flashing cash and giving $20 tips on the date. Yeah, I'm not sure either.
He's got enough juice to get a custom. I mean, we didn't talk about it. Like, I feel like it's so famous you don't have to, but like, it's a tour de force him entering that club, and it's not like they have a reserve table.
Right.
They make a table right in the middle of the dance floor, and I love how like there's other people that had front row seats, and like the women that they're dating are like shooting daggers at Henry and Lorraine Bracco, Karen. But they're men. The men are stone faced because they're like, I'm not going to say a damn thing.
Well, they get
this
up
is
and
highly
they shake
outrageous.
Right,
right.
Yeah, they shake his hand and say, "Great to see you," because like even though he's plopping down right in front of him, he's the man.
Right.
If you don't do that, he might feel like you don't properly respect him, and then you
might not respect his crew, and then how much does that go to Polly, and then you get Polly worked up, and it's all over. But yeah. It's one of the funniest scenes. I crack up every single time where he comes home to Karen's like Jewish mother, like berating him about, wow, he's no man. And he just like comes to the door and he just does an Abe Simpson. He just walks right back out and just starts laughing hysterically. But then, then they get a house.
Yep.
But there's also like, I don't know, because I think that's something interesting about Karen is she is a lot of times the ideal mafia wife, but she also is not, because like the difference between the way she treats the feds, like, hey, come in, here's a cup of coffee. Yep, you got your warrant. All right, I'm gonna go sit here in the living room, where the others are like spitting on them and throwing things at them. It's like she's a little bit smarter than your average mafia wife, maybe.
Yeah,
She's
for
cut from a
sure.
slightly different cloth, even though she has that same gear too.
Also seems maybe like you said a little more interested in being that. And they make a point about how it all becomes normal after a time. You know, it's not
Right.
even it's the frog boiling in the pot. Like you see enough strange things that you go, okay, that's a little weird. Like he's staying out all night, but he's with his buddies. You know, no big deal.
He's busy.
It
He's a
just
union
eventually becomes
contractor.
normal.
That's yeah, yeah. He's a union rep. There's a lot of stuff. You
Hmm.
got a lot of labor disputes to settle one way or another.
Right.
I love this scene. This like another funny scene of her. It's kind of like this part of the movie is her transformation from kind of wide-eyed Jewish girl growing up in New York and Jersey to like mafia wife. But that part where he's going off to work and she's like, "Can I get a little bit of money?" And he's like, "How much?" And she like gestures like an inch thick stack of bills.
Uh-huh.
And then she goes to get like he's got to go, and she starts trying to give him a blowjob. He's like, oh, all right. I just that Ray Liotta performance is so fucking funny, and then it's mirrored with his mistress like in the next act.
Yeah.
I think it's great. Do you want to move on to Henry at the height of his power? Because like I said, the high water mark is when they get married, but he hasn't actually got to the heights of his power. This is the scene where but things go wrong. This is like Adam and Eve eating the apple, right? When Tommy gets into the fight with the other made man over the shine box stuff.
Yeah, bats.
I'm actually somewhat impressed by how much restraint Tommy showed in this. Like Tommy is very aware of the danger he's in. And it's all he can do to sit down and buy the guy drinks. And then when he turns around and it's like, after they establish like, hey, if I really wanted to insult you, I'd tell you to go get your shoe shine box. And they have Robert De Niro's done everything he can to kind of be the diplomat. It's like, yeah, he's a little bit, you were kind of out of line too, blah, blah, blah. And everything's kind of calmed down. And like there's this long beat and he calls back over his shoulder. Yeah, now go get your fucking shine box.
Mm-hmm.
And it's on. Did you think this guy's pretty dumb for allowing like Jimmy and Henry to keep him there past like it felt like some of these guys should be smarter about seeing some of the danger they're in.
Well, he's a made man. Like don't forget that aspect. Like he thinks he is literally untouchable.
This is like the Red Wedding in Game of Thrones, like the fact that somebody would actually betray you against the only laws that matter in these neighborhoods, like
and against their own sense of security, right? Like if Tommy betrays him, he's a dead man.
Yeah.
So yeah, like being a made man, like that's the difference between Bats staying there and feeling invincible versus Bats leaving because Tommy's probably coming back with a gun.
Yeah. But I just feel like Tommy at this stage in his career, this guy should have known. But maybe he did. And he was feeling it too because he just got out of jail, and he's getting like toasted by everybody, and he's kind of full of himself, probably a little drunk. Mm-hmm. But it's funny because like this is an insanely violent sequence. This like Robert De Niro and Joe Pesci stomping this guy into the linoleum and then stabbing him and shooting him. But also has one of the funniest scenes where Tommy shows up at his mom's house at 3 a.m. to get a shovel.
Yeah.
Did you know that this woman is actually Martin Scorsese's mom, Catherine Scorsese?
I found that out, and his dad's also in the film. He's the prison cook.
Oh, I wondered about. Okay, I can. Oh, you know what? I can see it.
Uh-huh.
He looks exactly like Martin Scorsese does right now.
Yep, for sure.
But I thought there's an interesting note where Martin Scorsese said that he didn't tell his mom what the setting of the scene. He didn't say, hey, your son's got a body in the caddy out in the front yard. He said, all you know is your son has showed up at 3 o'clock in the morning with his friends. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to cook food for all of them. Mm-hmm. And there's this detail like Tommy and Henry are eating like Italian, but she's made a whole separate Irish thing for Jimmy. I can't remember what it is, but like he's eating something different because, oh, you won't like all this meatballs and stuff. Let me fry up some potatoes or some shit. I don't know what she would make. They get the dog. There's this dog painting scene. It's like it just stays on forever. And I love it. I don't know. I think it's this black scene, but it's got this hilarious humor, and Martin Scorsese's mom kind of makes it all work.
Hmm.
I guess a lot of that stuff, a lot of this dialogue especially was improvised, like Robert De Niro coming in with like, it's the hoof, because he's talking like, the deer's feet, you know, the guy's stuck in, it's like, oh, it's the hoof, Tommy.
Hmm.
But just to realize like how insane these people's lives are, that like they bury this guy and then the property gets sold for real estate development. So 6 months later, they got to go back and dig up this decomposing corpse.
Yeah.
And I even love Tommy, like, you know, Henry's out there puking and Tommy's like, hey, after this, we'll go back and get some greasy food and we'll do. It's like, no, it's hilarious.
Hmm.
So at this point in the movie, like I said, this is the original sin that eventually brings them all down, or brings their, you know, kind of is the biggest contributor to the decline of the crew. But what actually brings them down is something really stupid. And I like this detail that like they beat up some guy who was the brother of an FBI court recorder. And it's like one of those things where, like, if you're a civilian and some punk on says something to you, and you're like, "Fuck you," and you find out he's like a made man's nephew, and now you're finding yourself getting beat to death and thrown into a ditch.
Yeah.
It's that on the other side. You happen to piss off somebody that's got suction in the legit side of the world, and now the full wrath of the federal government's coming down, and everyone goes away. Everyone goes away. But it's this distinct kind of like nice, like almost intermission of these gangsters in prison, and showing that like it's in prison is kind of a bummer, but their life doesn't really fundamentally change.
Sure.
Still living high off the hog. They're still eating. They're hanging out with their guys. They're listening to their baseball games.
Yeah,
What
they've
doesn't
got
make
all
sense to
the guards bribed. Like they're getting whatever they want whenever they want it.
what doesn't make sense to me is why they let Henry twist in the wind in prison. This seems like the stupidest course of action you can take. If they're like worried about him turning or whatnot, and they're forcing him into like this life of selling drugs to make ends meet, because like they're not, and not even just him, but like Karen's trying to go to Polly and Jimmy, and they're stonewalling, they're not giving him any, they're telling her to go on welfare and shit. Do you have any inside information about like why this seems not very gangster, not very Cash Money of you, Polly?
Yeah, no, I'm with you. In an organization that's all about loyalty, you would think that there'd be some loyalty toward the family of, part of your crew that's in prison, but doesn't seem like it.
No, and Henry acts like, I wonder if the reason he's getting left to twist in the wind is because Polly already knows about this drug stuff, and he's like, you're doing it the wrong way. Because they have this conversation after he gets out, and he's like, everything seems like fine, and it's a completely polar opposite of the experience he has as his 13-year-old coming out of prison. You know, like he goes into prison and he's fine when the big guys are there, but after they bail out and he's left there, he's left twist to win. This feels like I don't know why they're freezing him out. It's because he's just Polly's scared to death to get caught up with this drug stuff.
Maybe they make it pretty clear that Polly doesn't know about the drug stuff either. At that time, right? Like,
But he does, because when he gets out of prison, the first thing he says is like, I understand what you had to do in prison, you had to do. But that implies like, he didn't say, he's like, hey kid, there's a right way to do it and the wrong way, and you did the wrong way, and now you need to come correct. It's like, we all understand you have to do that because you're in prison. There's something in this movie, maybe someone can send in an email to host@baldmove.com, like a gangster, a real gangster. I guess I could read the fucking book. But like, there's something that's weird about how they just let him twist, because I feel like,
well, Polly,
that's also
he's also in there for a while, right? He gets out after a year, and then I think he's on parole. So if he gets caught, you know, associating with felons, I assume, he'll be sent back for much longer. So yeah, I can see maybe he distances himself from that.
Yeah. But I just feel like that. I don't know. Maybe the FBI still got the juice on it, but I feel like that they should be able to like take care of the parole officer. Like Henry clearly doesn't give a shit about reporting to his parole officer or keeping his nose clean. Of course, then again, Henry gets pinched later on.
Yeah.
But this is like the beginning of the end, you know. He gets out, and now he's got his own thing going, and he's got Jimmy and Tommy in with it, and they're all doing this underneath Polly's nose, and just everything, like their house. It's like, it's the most garish, Like you can tell it's brand new and it's like 1980s, but this stuff is like late 70s stuff, and it's just so
Yeah.
gross. And
I mean, this is the
um,
perfect house for this guy. Like, he's a cokehead. He, like, of course he gets a
yeah,
fucking
you're
white
right.
Christmas tree, right? Like,
Of course he does. Yeah,
of
yeah,
course he does. It's the ugliest Christmas tree you can buy.
yeah. And they do this big heist, this big Christmas heist that makes everybody rich. But it fucks with them because like, why does Jimmy start whacking everybody? Because I feel like I've seen I feel like I keep changing my mind because the movie has two perspectives, and at this point Henry becomes an unreliable narrator, and
Mhm.
it's only like the last two times I've watched this movie I kind of fully realized like what all the shit was going on, because there's a scene where Henry's internally narrating to us that like Jimmy is being a real hard ass about these guns, and he's going to have me waste my time getting these guns, and I'm taking Jimmy's a crazy one, but what is clear to me is that Henry just half-assed it. He bought guns that didn't have threads for the silencers, and
Mhm.
Jimmy's like, "What are you doing? You got these drugs." But that's like almost a subtext to the movie. It's like literally Henry's talking over, and it paints a picture of like Henry's really slipping, but he's on so many drugs that he doesn't really understand. And I wonder, because there's like
Yeah.
2 points that like Jimmy's afraid because he's trying to isolate anyone that could tie him to the job, and
I also
that, and
I also think he's getting
he's
greedy,
greedy.
and yeah, like he wants the money, and also I think it's around that time when we find out that Tommy's going to be a made man, and so he's not just getting greedy but feeling more and more like close to power, right? He's feeling that power within his grasp, and I think that's feeding into the greed, and he just starts saying, "Well, fuck it, none of these people deserve this. I'm taking it all." Uh, and yeah, I think that's the impression I get, that it's like a combination of greed and power going to his head.
And from here on out, this movie becomes one of the most stressful things to watch in the world, because the full paranoia of the mafia lifestyle is on display. Like, you will never be more loved than the day they put a gun to your head and squeeze the trigger.
Yeah.
Like, you will never see it coming, because like, in fact, Tommy realizes at the very end. I guess it's because
Mhm.
he walks into the room and it's empty. Like, I don't, if
Yeah.
there's like supposed to be like he's expecting a whole bunch of fat Italian dudes in poorly tailored expensive suits with like, did they have like some kind of masonry, right, where they have like silk scarves and wafers and communions, and
I don't know what the ceremony is, but yeah, I mean, look at
there's
every
got to
other
be
celebration
something.
in this movie, and there's,
Yeah.
100 people in the room waiting with their hands out to greet you, a big open hugs, big kisses on the cheeks. He walks into an empty room here, and he knows he's dead.
um this yeah, but it's a great scene, because he's like, he hasn't going up to his mansion, he's joshing with the old timers, and he's talking about it, and like, again, like, it's all a great time until that door opens and he sees the room's empty, and he's like, oh fuck, and then it's over.
Yeah.
um is this movie a Christmas movie, Jim? We should talk about this at this point, because there's two Christmas songs played,
Hmm.
prominent Christmas lighting, it's happening at Christmas, there's actually two different Christmas scenes.
gifts given.
Christmas gifts being given, a Christmas tree is being set up.
I don't think this is a Christmas movie though, because the plot is not tied into the Christmas aspect. Yeah, the most you can say it's tied in is that they kill those people who gave the gifts and bought the cars and the furs and stuff like that. But yeah, not a Christmas movie.
Yeah. But then, yeah, we switch into late stage Henry, where is this helicopter legit? Is it actually a thing? Because I kept on noticing, this is another one where I really was paying attention this time, and I noticed there's like 3 different helicopters. It's
Yeah,
not the same one.
it's like a news
And
chopper, and yeah,
yeah, yeah. But then again, like, if the FBI was tailing you, or the DEA, like, I don't think they would have like black helicopters with DEA on the underside of it. It would probably be, like, unmarked kind of. So I still don't know whether how much of this stuff is him screwing up and how much of this stuff is him imagining things and being paranoid, because they clearly, like, they make it seem like Karen didn't have to flush all that dope down the toilet.
well, I mean, Henry says that, but I think she did the right thing.
I think she did the right thing too. And also, like, how the hell is she supposed to know that Henry's down to his last $60,000?
Yeah.
Like, what? I mean, you can clearly see that they're spending it as fast as they're making it, but holy hell,
Hmm.
no rainy day fun whatsoever. But again, you're not like this is like trying to critique a drug addict because that's exactly what it is. Like Henry is just way the fuck gone at this point in the movie.
And it's like the money comes and goes in that life, right? Like
Yeah.
you make it on Tuesday, you spend it on Wednesday, on Thursday there's going to be another job coming around to make twice as much, you know.
Right.
It's
And
not
there's
like
no bank.
money is scarce.
You don't have a bank account.
No. And there's plenty of
No.
opportunity to make money out there. You just got to go find it. And I think that's how they live, kind of on that edge.
Do you think that the deal with Karen and the dresses, do you think that Jimmy was trying to whack her? Or is this her being paranoid? Oh, really?
I do. Yeah.
I thought there'd be a little bit more debate on that. But
What do you
why?
think?
I mean, it plays identically. Like if Jimmy wants her to go take a look at some dresses because he just stole a truck full of dresses and he goes down to the abandoned shop where there's dudes unloading boxes and crates and stuff, are they there to kill her? Or are they just unloading ill-gotten goods and getting it ready for resale? Like,
no, it's a fair
I think
question,
that's the point. I think that's the point in the paranoia he's trying to like. It's if you're Karen, if you run, then you have turned your back and now you're a target.
Mm-hmm.
But if you go along with it, you might get capped or you might get some nice dresses.
Yeah, totally not worth it. Like I'm not going to trade dresses for my life. But you have to also remember that Jimmy is also paranoid at this point, right? And he's whacking people left and right. They abandoned Karen when she was when Henry was in prison. So, you know, why would they suddenly step up and help her now that they need money and they're doing this drug stuff? Yeah,
why would
think
they kill her?
There's
too?
a lot of stuff there that says Jimmy's trying to kill her.
Like killing killing Henry's wife doesn't really get them anything. You know, it doesn't make him come in. Like it's almost like a huge tell on their point too. They're playing this game of like, hey, we're all friends, right? Everyone's playing. It's a game of chicken, and whoever blinks first reveals themselves as the shitbag.
So you think it's meant to like make Henry feel a little more at ease when they ask him to go to Florida, or what?
See, that's what I was thinking. That like if Jimmy gives like, you know, hey, here's a couple $1,000s and some nice dresses, and she goes and butters him. I look, I know he wants to kill Henry. Absolutely. Sure. I'm just questioning whether the paranoia here is that, you know, that she read the situation wrong.
Maybe.
I love De Niro on this stage with those giant glasses to make his eyes look like an owl. I thought that was a nice little characterization, him getting older. But
there's an airline ticket on the same day. There's an airline ticket that he gives to like the babysitter, right? Because she's going to do this drug deal or whatever for him.
Right. Fly down drugs. Yeah.
The front of this thing is censored with a big fat black bar. And I was wondering why. And I looked it up, and apparently the airline wouldn't give them permission to use the logos because drugs and stuff. Which it is so ridiculous. And back then they didn't have the tech to digitally alter this and remove it. So they just put a big stupid black bar over it.
I didn't even notice it, honestly.
God, I could not notice it.
That's hilarious. Also, like, how dare anyone besmirch the reputation of the American airline business? You know, like, my God.
Yeah.
But no, I thought that was it. And like his, you know, him never come back from Florida alive. At the end where he's like thinking about his life, and he says when he goes into federal custody that all he has is a birth certificate and an arrest sheet. That's like the only, like making a mafia guy disappear must be super easy. Because it's like just one line in a database you got to delete. And they're like, what did you make? Because there's nothing like this in the whole film. The fourth wall break that Henry does while he's testifying against the Polly and their outfit.
Yeah, I loved it. I almost thought it felt like he owned that courtroom in a way. Like somehow, even though he was, mixed up in this whole thing, he had found his way out. And that
he's
he was
literally
just
walking out of the situation,
room, right?
Yeah.
But it doesn't end on that note. It eventually takes him through to the witness protection program, and that's sort of his lament is that he has to be a normal schmuck now.
So life as a schnook, and then they end with this really weird, poorly done, in my opinion, blow up frame of Joe Pesci emptying a 6-shooter right at the camera.
I guess it's an homage to another movie. That I've never
is
seen.
it? Okay. All right, that makes sense because I'm like, they got a dead character dressed in an outfit I've never seen him in. I've never seen this guy wear a hat, and he's just emptying a revolver. Like, what is this saying? Like, if it was some nondescript guy, I think that would have been interesting because it's like it's kind of like it's nonsensical in the same way the end of Sopranos is nonsensical. Like but it does make sense if you think about it. Because I subscribe. I don't know if you do. I subscribe that the end of Sopranos is,
Tony gets shot.
Tony getting whacked.
Yeah.
I can't believe people fucking dispute that. But anyway, maybe you want to argue, come find me on the internet. But I thought if it was just some like, mafia goomba looking guy, that's like, that would show the exit. Like, yeah, my life is a schnook, but also life is a schnook with everybody, with like a gun behind perhaps every blade of grass. And they already established his paranoia and all that kind of stuff. And I don't know. I thought it was weird, but if it's an homage to another movie, then I guess it can be weird.
Yeah, this movie for its runtime doesn't spend a lot of time dwelling on the paranoia of being in that life. Of being chased by the law, being potentially whacked by your own guys. Like, there are a lot of movies, and Irishman is one of them, right? Like with the stuff with what's Al Pacino's character, the super famous union.
Yeah, Jimmy Hoffa.
Jimmy Hoffa, yeah. Like they dwell on that stuff in that movie a lot more. This one, it really has like 2 scenes that is all about that, but it's about so much more than that too.
Yeah, it's almost like the law is not a serious. They even said the wives is like anyone gets pinched. It's like it reminded me a lot of the in the book The Right Stuff. Every time one of the test pilots died and they get in the bar in the desert and they're talking about, they never say like, oh, damn, man, our lives are insane. We're strapping these rockets between our legs and pushing them past faster than any other person's. Like, it's inevitable. We're going to get smeared as a red stain across the desert floor. It's always like, he just didn't have the right stuff. Like, he wasn't able to handle the speed. He didn't, like, if obviously you flip this switch instead of that switch and you bail. Like, they tell themselves these stories, and like felt like I was watching that amongst the mafia wives when they were saying things like, they didn't have their shit together. They weren't organized.
It's probably about the illusion.
That's why they got pinched. Yeah, right. That's exactly what it is. But like as a consequence, like the law never really feels like you never see cops in this film. It feels like an act, like it literally was an accident. It's like getting struck by lightning, how they landed in jail the first time. And then the second time around, it's because, Henry wasn't organized. He lost his edge and started fucking around.
Yeah.
Tell the movie. Like I said, this last 45 minutes or so, like I feel as sweaty as Henry is trying to get back, and like just this insane this a stoner logic of like, well, I gotta get my brother and I gotta cook and I gotta have the sauce on here and I'll be right back, and it's like 5:00 and he comes back at 8:45 and he's got to get the lucky hats and now he's there and it's 11. Like they're eating like at 1, like all the kids are around the table. It's like, what an insane way to live. Yeah. They're even eating this big family dinner at 1:00 in the morning because that's how long it took Henry to mix up all of his drugs. And
yeah, it's chaos.
I don't know. Sweet talk his mistress into helping him, and then once he gets what he wants, he like literally grabs all his stuff, goes out the front door laughing like the Grinch that stole Christmas. Like, what are you like? Okay, let's see if you can rope her in for the next batch. I don't know. It's a great movie though. It's effortless to watch.
Oh yeah.
Even like I said, like maybe the first time through that last 45 minutes is like unbearable, because I noticed like Cecily was squirming a lot more than I was, because I was just like, this is all part of the ride, man. This is the roller coaster hill. This is why we're riding this ride, right? But the first time you go down that hill, it's terrifying.
And I really like the song choice at the end. Right as the movie ends, over the credits, they play this punk version by Sid Vicious of "I Did It My Way," My Way. Which is a Frank Sinatra cover, and he's got such a strange distorted voice. It almost feels like a bizarro world version of My Way, right? Like My Way landed him where he's at the end of this movie, which is not in that life that he always wanted. It's like this. They're using it ironically almost, and I think
that's a smart call out. I didn't think about it, but it also works as kind of like a commentary on the generational change. Like Paulie's Frank Sinatra, Henry's Sid Vicious.
Yeah.
They're both doing it their way, but because I've always thought it's fascinating. That's they get into the Goodfellas. Like, what if the mafia had not gotten into the drugs? I don't know. Didn't you watch American Gangster? And I think Denzel Washington runs you out of town.
Yeah.
If you stay out of the coke and heroin, then it's like there was no way to win because they still had this enormous, like, law enforcement. You get the idea that they've been waiting for them to fuck up since Prohibition, and now they are, and they're getting in drugs, and that's politically unfair. It's fascinating. It's almost like watching any other business, like podcasts and the coronavirus. Like, what happens when something outside your business forces you to change rapidly? Like if you're an Airbnb during the coronavirus, like, you didn't do anything. You were making money hand over fist. Something external changed, and now you're fucked.
To start whacking your business partners. Better watch
your
out.
taxi cab driver to put $1 million for a medallion, and then Uber comes to town. Like,
right.
It's the comet that hit the dinosaur. What do you do?
Yeah.
You get replaced by a younger, nimbler. Yeah. It's a great film, and it's 30 years old. And if you haven't seen it, like, if you don't like gangster films, I'm gonna say this is like gonna change your mind about it. Although I do think there are some, like I said, the fact that it has a fairly strong, well-written woman at the heart of it is like a big change from like the Coppola stuff. It feels like light on the glamorization compared to others, like, Michael Corleone. You kind of feel like if he made a mistake or two, but like, it's more Greek tragedy, where Henry he starts getting high in his own supply, and things go sideways. Like, it is a little bit more of an unconventional gangster film. A lot of it's it's hugely influential, so it's like stuff that's been done to death. But if you want to see the OG, check it out. It's great, and it's the 30th anniversary. It's best time to do it. So that's our coverage of Goodfellas. Next week, it's kind of accident. We didn't intend it to happen this way, but we're gonna have back-to-back Scorsese. If you like Goodfellas, wait till you see the Wall Street version. Decidedly more glamorous and glorification in this movie.
Oh yeah.
The next movie. These are like opposite ends of the glorification scale. We're going to do Wolf of Wall Street with Leonardo DiCaprio, Jonah Hill, etc., and Margot Robbie, and we'll be back with that next week. Until then, I'm Aaron.
And I'm Jim.
See ya.